Hey DCMAC, I want to take a second to give you a study tip when you're trying to combine what's happening with aggregate demand and supply in the macro equilibrium model, and when you're looking back at the Phillips curve and kind of trying to figure out how those work together. I want to talk for a second about symmetry, because what you need to know is that symmetry is very, very important. And unless you're Mary Poppins, when you look in the mirror, everything is reflected back perfectly, but backwards. So I want you to kind of think about that mirror image idea. Okay? So if you're looking at a side-by-side look of the macro equilibrium graph, which is over here on the left, and of the Phillips curve, which is over here on the right, it's kind of hard to see what's going on unless you take away aggregate demand. If you pull the aggregate demand line, you can kind of see how the curves have a similar shape to them, but they're mirror images of each other. When you're looking at what's going on, it's kind of helpful to see how this goes. So I want you to think about a recessionary gap. In a recessionary gap, you would have an equilibrium point that is to the left of your LRAS. When that long-run aggregate supply is not met by all of your curves, you have got what we call a recessionary gap. So when your equilibrium point is over here to the left, where are you going to be on the Phillips curve? Think about a mirror image. You're going to be on the right of what could be the equilibrium point on a Phillips curve. For an inflationary gap, it's exactly the opposite. If I look at what I've got, if I have an inflationary gap, my equilibrium point is to the right of the LRAS, and so anything over here would be considered to be an inflationary situation. If I'm looking at a Phillips curve, it's a mirror image, so anything to the left of the long-run Phillips curve would be considered to be an inflationary situation. So I want you to kind of keep that in your mind. So if I go back to this side-by-side look and I add an aggregate demand, think about how this might perceive itself. When I've got this situation, what I'm looking at is if I see a shift of aggregate demand on my macro equilibrium model to create an inflationary gap situation, what I'm going to see on a Phillips curve is that I've moved along the short-run Phillips curve to be in a situation that is to the left of the LRPC. Now, if I have a situation where my aggregate demand moves to the left and creates a deflationary or a recessionary gap, what's going to happen to my Phillips curve? You're going to see me move to the right of my long-run Phillips curve and be in a situation where I've moved along the line to this side. So that can kind of help you look at how these things can interact. It's a little bit different when you talk about shifts of the aggregate supply curve. When aggregate supply shifts and you have a supply shock that creates a recessionary gap over here to the left, what's going to happen on the Phillips curve? That's going to be a situation where the Phillips curve itself will actually shift. So you are in a situation where you've got a new Phillips curve, you've got a new place that is to the right of your long-run Phillips curve. Same deal, if this aggregate supply shifts to the right and creates an inflationary gap, your short-run Phillips curve is going to move to the left and create a recessionary situation on that graph as well. So how would this look in a problem? What did I say? Okay, if I have you look at these two graphs, show me what happens if there's an increase in aggregate demand. What you're going to do is you're going to show me, hey, aggregate demand increased, I've created an inflationary gap, everything is kind of out of control. How do I show that on the Phillips curve? Well, I'm going to show you a shift to the left on the Phillips curve to show that I am in a situation with higher inflation. If I say, okay, show me the LRPC and SRPC with a recessionary gap, that sounds fancy. Well, okay, what's going to happen here is I'm in a recessionary situation. So you have to say, I'm no longer at what would be my equilibrium point where they cross over. I'm going to be in a situation where I am off of equilibrium in a recessionary place on the Phillips curve. So if aggregate demand shifted to the left even farther, creating a bigger recession, what's going to happen on your Phillips curve? You're going to move along the curve to the right, showing an even greater recession on the Phillips curve. Another thing I could say is, Show me these graphs at full employment. Well, I'm going to draw my Phillips curve at full employment where everything is at equilibrium for both graphs. If aggregate supply falls, a decrease in supply means I'm shifting to the left. So I'm going to be showing a shift to the left of my aggregate supply, creating a recession. And on my Phillips curve, I'm going to be showing a shift to the right of the entire curve, showing that recession in the Phillips curve itself. Last sort of example I can give you, let's say I've got the LRPC and SRPC with a recessionary gap. Well, I'm going to draw a recessionary situation for my Phillips curve. And the question says, what happens when aggregate supply goes up? Well, an increase in aggregate supply shifts it to the right. So I'll shift aggregate supply to the right, returning me to a equilibrium sort of situation. On the Phillips curve, I'm going to shift the Phillips curve to the left, moving back to an equilibrium in the Phillips curve. Hope that helps you kind of figure those things out. By now, you should be able to take the four big models that we've done, the PPC, the production possibilities curve, the business cycle, aggregate demand and supply, and a Phillips curve to show full employment, a recessionary gap, and an inflationary gap. That's how you know when you really have it. Hope this helped. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.